Hello, this is Christiane Piano, and welcome to your Reset Reflections. This week's episode is a reflection on thriving. Often in life, as we get up every morning and every day, we have our habits, we have our schedules, we have our obligations, and we go about doing what we need to do. And every once in a while, whether it's on a daily, a weekly, a monthly, bi-monthly, yearly, it's very supportive if you take a moment to sit back and ask yourself, am I operating from a place of thriving or surviving? Now, if you look up the definition in the Oxford Dictionary on thriving, you will find flourishing, prosperous, and growing vigorously. And if you look up the word surviving, you'll find remaining alive, continuing to exist, to function, withstand, and hardships. Interestingly enough, the synonyms for survive are bear, endure, exist, get through, handle, keep, last, live, recover, remain, ride out, subsist, suffer, sustain, weather, withstand. Take a moment just to sit with that, because for sure there are moments where you find yourself simply surviving, simply getting through. But there's something that's possible beyond surviving. You see, surviving refers to the state of simply getting by, where you are able to meet your basic needs, but struggle to achieve your goals, live into your visions, and feel fulfilled. Thriving, on the other hand, involves actively living into your visions, actively pursuing your goals, and experiencing a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your life. So if we wanted to sum it up real briefly, surviving is continuing to live or exist, and thriving is to grow, to develop, to prosper, and to flourish. Now, what's really, really important here is that whatever space you find yourself in, that there's no judgment, that you just simply begin to make a distinction between the two. Because when it comes to body, mind, well-being, there are things you can do to support yourself to move out of surviving and into thriving. There's a beautiful quote that I absolutely love and come back to time and time again by Maya Angelou. And she says, "My mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, compassion, humor, and style." And I read this to remind myself, where am I out of balance? Am I lacking humor? If you haven't listened to the reflection on laughter, feel free to go back and listen to that. You'll find that supportive where it comes to humor and your growth process and body, mind, well-being. Thriving and BodyMind well-being and growth are all interrelated. And like I said at the start of this episode, taking a moment more often than not to check in with yourself. How am I doing? Where am I coming from in my life? This one and precious life I have to live. And what can I do to support myself so I can move beyond simply surviving? Now, obviously, if you're in a place where you don't know where your next meal is coming from and you don't have a roof over your head, you definitely are needing to focus on surviving. But if you do have a roof over your head and food on the table and clothes on your back, then you have other things that you can focus on in your life. You can channel and hone your energies and attentions and actions into creating a life rather than simply getting by. And when you reflect, you're in conversation with yourself, and sometimes you're in conversation with others. And reflection is fundamental to gaining clarity. Clarity for what? Well, how your actions are supporting you to create that life of thriving. Yes, you can look at how often you rest, you can look at the foods you eat, you can look at your exercise schedule, but we're talking about something much deeper than that. We're talking about a place you come from in your life, which will influence the actions you take or even see as a possibility. When you have clarity, you can then focus your energies. You can focus your answers to invitations into yeses and nos more simply. When you have a sense of purpose when you wake up in the morning, a purpose of the vision of your life, every time you take an action towards living into your vision, you'll experience fulfillment, wholeness, a deep sense of connection with life. So how often do you take a moment to pause and to reflect? How clear are you on your vision, which is different from a goal? You see, visions are something we live into on a daily, and they're influenced by our values. Goals, on the other hand, are a place of arrival. It's future-oriented. Vision is moment-to-moment oriented. And as we all know, when things are flowing, it's easy to be with things as they are, because when they're flowing, they're usually going as we had hoped or never expected, but we like the experience. Yet when we begin to face challenges, that is, when things are not going as planned or we don't like them, we can easily fall into resistance. Something is that should not be, or something is not that should be, and fight it, try and pull and tug at it and force it in the direction that we want it to go. Or we can fall into resignation, kind of just throw in the towel. Perhaps you find yourself in a morning waking up and going, I'm going to do this. And then a little voice in your head says, why bother? I already know how it's going to turn out. And so you fall into a place of deep inaction, maybe in freeze mode and shut down and isolate oneself. Now, this is part of being human. Learning to ride the wave and move back and reset into balance is an art in and of itself. And life is always offering up opportunities to learn new modalities, new ways to support ourselves, to thrive. And when you ride a wave, often you'll find yourself having to alter course, modify, adjust, adapt. And to do this, you'll need to be present in the moment and in touch with whatever situation you find yourself in and the reality of it. And this takes honesty. And honesty is very different from coping and strategies of survival. So whenever you find yourself applying a coping strategy, if you haven't listened to the reflection on Band-Aids, you may want to go back in and do that to support yourself and getting clarity for yourself on that one. But whenever we find ourselves applying strategies in relationships, conversations, or with ourselves, we know we're in survival mode, not thriving mode. When we're thriving, we can be deeply honest with ourselves and others. And we can even be aware of the mind's stuckness. If you ask yourself, what is it I want in my life right now? You may be challenged in answering it. But if you ask yourself, what is it I do not want? The answers probably will flow in very quickly because the mind simply focuses on the nots. So to ask yourself the question, what do I want? And do my actions align with that? And how do I support myself, even in the face of challenges? What is needed to support my growth and evolution as a human being in this one and precious life? And then even if you have been actively supporting yourself in the growth process, what is needed to support the work that has been done? It's like maintenance on the daily. It's like taking care of a plant that has been planted. You don't just plant a seed and leave it there and hope for the best. But we often approach life that way. How do I stay in touch with the conversation of body, mind, well-being, and growth? And have I formed habits that are no longer supporting me? What kind of conversations am I in? What kind of people do I surround myself with? And in the end, is it supporting me in thriving or surviving? When you're thriving, you will face challenges differently. You'll experience your daily life differently. It has a different flavor. It's like, okay, life, what are you putting on the table now? All right, here we go. And it's not about just getting through the day. So if you're interested in gaining clarity for yourself on what's next for you, or what may be your vision for yourself, and you feel a little lost, or you're not quite sure, or you're stuck, feel free to reach out to me and have a conversation. Free 15-minute consult. Can schedule it on christianepiano.com. Or you can email me at growth@christianepiano.com. And perhaps we can find a way to support you in realizing your visions for yourself and your life so you can spend more time thriving. Even if you're thriving, it does not mean you won't pop into surviving. That's just part of the human experience. But perhaps after listening to this episode, you'll begin to explore the distinction between the two, and then learn slowly over time, or perhaps reconvene with practices that support you for moving and shifting out of surviving into thriving. So, I do hope you found this episode supportive. Feel free to reach out and share with me what resonated with you. Feel free to follow, like, or even share this episode with someone you think it would be supportive of.